Hey, what's up, guys? I thought I'd start another loose series of videos, even though I haven't finished the other ones, on comics from, I guess you'd say, the historical loser's perspective. Now, I've already done some of these. For example, the Simon Gertie graphic novel by Timothy Truman, and of course, the some of the stuff from Wayne Van Zant dealing with the Germans and the Confederacy. Now, as you know, there's these comics that cover the other side. They're mostly almost always either Japanese or independent American comics from a while ago. Some of them DC comics from even longer while ago. Um, what the time we live in now, there's just one consensus that is allowed, and every measure will be poured into demonizing the losing side of these paradigm defining wars that we've had in the last 150 years, last century, and even more recently. So I figure with this series of videos, I'll cover that with protagonists who are from the other side. Now, Ted Nomura, Ben Dunn. Ted Nomura was these are Antarctic Press comics. Ted Nomura was known for a very hard to find independent comic called Tigers of Terror, which was basically Ted's um, excuse to draw buxom women, curvy women, and jet fighters. I think I found one issue of it in Pennsylvania, of all places, way back in the late 80s. I could never even find issues of Tigers of Terror in New York City. That's how hard it was to get. At some point, Ted Nomura became more famous for doing these altered World War II alternate histories. And here he's working with Ben Dunn. These are both Asian Americans from Texas, if I remember. Obviously, Nomura is a Japanese American, and Dunn is Chinese American. Now, it's crazy. I mean, obviously, I don't even have to bring up the cover here, where at one point showing this was just like something that would be okay. This is historical. Well, now, as you know, you just have good. You have an angry feminine good, and you have just utter evil that must all traces must be eliminated from the public square and from the private square. So it's very interesting to see this. So let me get into this Luftwaffe 1946. Now, the funny thing about Ted Nomura is I really like his art style. And of course, Ben Dunn has his own art style. He's famous Ninja High School. Um, you have sort of the two mixing the art together. I can tell sometimes when it's Ben Dunn, but like this is Ben Dunn art here, and that's Ted Nomura. Now, I like Ted Nomura's style. Ironically, he reminds me a lot of Wayne Van Zant. And both of these men, obviously, Wayne was drawing in the 80s as a replacement artist on the Nom, while Ted was very much independent. Now, the whole thing with this 1946, obviously, there's an alternate history where the Germans lasted longer in the war. They were able to make some of the weapons that were too little too late. They actually managed to make them a lot earlier, and they actually had an effect on extending the war. Although in the end, the Germans really were still losing, but it was interesting how the war ended. It was a very strange situation dealing with aliens, if I remember correctly. And what is this here? We have a scene. Oh, who's this? Everyone's favorite General Eisenhower. I won't say much about him, but I find Eisenhower probably one of the most contemptible figures in the 20th century. And in this reality, he gets done in by an ME 262. Oh, what a shame. Anyway, and the thing about this comic, about Ted Nomura's style is kind of funny. He's very super technical. There's a lot of talking, okay? A lot of talking. And he's very autistic. Uh, like I said, with the technical stuff, but there's a lot of talking and there's a lot of female characters. Now, this is kind of new. Obviously, he likes to make gutsy female characters here. And this is something that was, is now ubiquitous today. But the way he does it, there's a certain charm to it. Never are these women ever trying to undermine their country or their men, even if they have differences. And of course, there's some politically correct stuff in here you have to have. But he really shines in enjoying the technical aspects of it. If you look at the Germans in World War II, they made more than just the Me 262. They made rocket powered fighters. They had this one here, the HE 162, nicknamed the Sparrow. It was one of the people's jets. It was actually made out of wood, a lot of it. In this reality, these jets are come into action a lot sooner. So we have a lot of these characters. The story basically is showing how this war goes. I like the scene here where he's going to action and they shoot down some of these British Tempests, right? Yeah, there she is. So you get to see, similar to the, which I will cover at some point, the Katusha graphic novel by Wayne Van Zant. You have a bit of this girl power thing going on, but like I said, it's different. You had this going on in Japanese comics and anime also at the time, which Nomura obviously is greatly influenced by. But it's just different than what you have now. And I like the scene here too, where the Japanese flyers are kind of making fun of the Germans because they have a female pilot, and then she's gonna show this Japanese dude, some kind of little challenge here in flying. It's great, and you're watching this, and majority of the I don't have to say it. You're looking at basically the main characters that you see here are the Axis powers. And these conquest of space. And there's actually this character here. This character. Who is this person? There's actually some funny scenes where he's actually shown in a human light, which is probably an unforgivable sin now, but this was reprinted from the late 90s, I believe in 2000. So anyway, not really much to go on other than I would advise you check out Ted Nomura's work. The guy you're never going to see comics like this again unless they're either from Japan or they're on some independent platform that actually values freedom of speech, which will be less and less as time goes on. But there is a will, there is a way. And look at it, that's Ted Nomura's art right there. I like the way he draws the look, there's the mouse, there's the giant German super heavy tank. This actually came out. So I need to find these issues. I actually found these in a comic store nearby. And it's just I need to collect more of these. But I like this scene here too, at the end where this woman goes off to fight, and you have this all-female fighter squadron with the HE 162s going off against overwhelming odds against the just daily vast armadas of American bombers just bombing the living hell out of my mother's homeland back then. And none of them ever come back. But anyway, no need to get sentimental. And you can't have this anymore. And this was a little different. I think this was a little later. That's obviously what we call the Blue Max, the Paul Le Marais. I believe Ernst Jünger was the last guy to actually get this. And this was both a civilian and a military honor. This one, I guess this was volume 4. There's a lot more text in this. There was a lot of interesting, there's a lot, densely packed stuff. You have the gliders. You have some funny, goofy scenes here. You have this certain young runner with the big mustache. Who is this guy? You got World War One. You have this really good scene here. You got another historical figure here. There he is, Lenin. Now, I actually respect Lenin too. So I'm a historicist after all. I respect people that make their will to power, but separate. So again, a lot of this World War I biplane stuff. I can imagine drawing this. The only other comic that really covered this in any great detail was, of course, Enemy Ace, which I had covered, almost 2 years ago by Joe Kubert and the great Robert Kanigher. There's a scene here, I like it, where the woman's husband goes here. They're very touching, sentimental scenes as Ted Nomura's art. And she watches and she sees that her husband doesn't come back. And he draws like the women really beautiful and cute, So now we have intrigue, and there's a lot of photos in this. You could say that maybe Ted was cheating on this, but the photos add to this. See what else we got? We show the Luftwaffe forming with the planes. And now we have things about aliens. Oh, so it starts to change. It starts to end up really developing. And here's where you get a lot of the photos. You get the Panzer II, which is one of my favorite tanks. The Panzer II, meant to just be a training tank, but it's all you had, even invading Russia. But like I said, you have a lot of the photos here, the Char B1s, the 88. Yep. Hold on a second. It's always hard to do this. Yeah, you get some of these fighters that were never developed, but in this reality, where the war lasted longer, they were developed. And there you go. There's the B-17s. Just constant bombing. And the Luftwaffe are trying to defend the fatherland. And actually, a lot of the bombers, as a side note, as much as the Luftwaffe was decimated by the fighter escorts, a lot of these bombers were shot down by flak. In fact, half of the American bombers were shot down by flak. So you got real photos. You got the beautiful German women loyal to their men in their country. Oh, such horrible things. We must all be traitors, right? And also, Ted always is very fair. He shows the other side. He shows the plucky Soviet women, which you actually had. You have the scene here with the women tank operators, fighting for the motherland. However I feel about Bolshevism, I always mention the Russian people. And in some ways, you could say the Russian people were probably the eventual victors of the war years later. Probably along with the Japanese. And here you got the T-34-85s and the Russian women playing soccer. Very plucky. And of course, the king, the tiger. They even mention here the scene here where the tigers pretty much annihilated. In that one battle that occurs, they annihilated pretty much like 180 Russian tanks that went before them. So, all respect to the great Panzer men. And all respect to the Red Army men that fought to the death. I keep mentioning that. It's amazing that for all that was done by elements of the Red Army, it's amazing. I still have respect for the enemy. That's something that you can't have now. You must demonize the enemy. You must ridicule the enemy. Like all these videos that that YouTube is sending me because of the stuff I look at and maybe the stuff I make. But whatever. It's very feminine. Dying civilization thing to do that. It's also another Matrix, but I won't get into that. And this is funny. This looks like painted artwork. This looks like the cover of a models, like Japanese models of German tanks. So, and anyway, it's Tigers of Terror. Luftwaffe 1946 and Tigers of Terror by Ted Nomura. Check it out. Comics from the losers of history's perspective. And now the winners are the losers. If you live long enough. That old line. All right. Later.